Well, the rain did him a favor with the mud on the road. No dust rose from the road like we talked about last time. But the rain did them another favor, and I don't know if they knew of either favor. Their battle plan was the ridge that Ferguson was on was a narrow ridge at the top, and the sides were steep, maybe 40, 45 feet in the air. And Ferguson was sitting up there just waiting for them. He had not done anything to resemble a defense. He was expecting 400 soldiers from Cornwallis, and he was gonna then just fight like the British did. And it would have favored the British had the fight been on an open ground, where the British tactics were better than the tactics that were about to be used on this hill. Well, we went around both sides of the ridge. The idea was we'd each get in place at the same moment, and we would fire up at the British on top, who we could even hear and see glimpses of when we got off our horses. They were not being quiet up there at all. And our plan was, with these long rifles we had, we could shoot up over the mountain and know if we missed, we wouldn't be hitting any of our own guys, because the bullets would be far in the air. We were great shots with these rifles. They were not good military weapons. They were bad military weapons for 2 or 3 reasons. First of all, you shot once, then you had to reload. And because these rifles had rifling inside, which means a spiral cut in the edge of the barrel inside, you had to push the bullet down through, and you had to clean it out nearly every time. So it took you 2 minutes to get ready to fire again, if you were lucky. If you had to clean the barrel out, it would be a lot longer. So that made them a hard weapon to use on the front in the battle. Puff of white smoke came out of the end of their gun, and it was like saying, "Here I am, British, here I am. It's going to take me 2 minutes to reload. Please be kind." Didn't work. Well, the guys got in place where they should have on this side of the mountain. They saw the British on top, a lot of targets. They fired. They did a lot of damage with that first volley. Ferguson saw the battle unfolding. He sent his 100 or so bayonets of his 1,200 or so men. I think he had 1,000 actually at that point. And he sent the bayonets to chase us. Now, bayonets are knives on the front of your gun. We had not a single bayonet on our long rifles. The rifles weren't stout enough to do a lot of damage. The British muskets were very stout, and they had muskets, and they were mainly musket bayonet fighters, up close and personal. That's what they accomplished here after that first round of gunfire. Ferguson sent the bayonets to chase us. We did what we always had to do in front of a bayonet charge. We ran. Generally, we ran home. That's what Ferguson knew. So he was pleased that the battle was nearly over. But then the guys on the other side pushed through a swamp made worse by the rain of the night before. They didn't get there in time. Now the British on top were lolling around up there, thinking the battle was over, like Ferguson thought. So these guys fired, and now they did a lot more damage from that side. Well, Ferguson is concerned, but he's not really seriously concerned yet, because he knows the guys on this side are running. He sends the bayonet troops back and have them come over the mountain and run and chase the guys on this side. They turned and ran. All done now, Ferguson thought. No. First time in Ferguson's history, anyway, the guys with on the side, the bayonets that started chasing, stopped when the bayonets turned around and went back to the mountain. And they reloaded, came back, fired again at the British, and now Ferguson is in trouble. He calls the bayonets back again. Very few bayonets left. Guys now on this side reloading and coming back. The whole battle took 65 minutes. 15,000 black powder shots fired, or tried to be fired. British muskets were never accurate. The reason was the muskets were bigger around than the lead you put in it, so you could drop the powder, you could drop the lead in, and you could be ready to shoot again in 15 seconds. But the barrel was a little bigger than the lead, and it rattled when it came down the barrel, and it was like a knuckleball in baseball. You didn't know exactly where it was going. So you just pointed it, and you got close enough to the enemy that you stabbed them with the bayonet. That's mainly what they did. 65 minutes, 15,000 black powder shots fired. Musket shots inaccurate, and worse, they were shooting down the hill. And sometimes the barrel or the lead just rolled out the end of the barrel. And they were losing. And Ferguson saw they were losing. And he was in a camouflaged outfit. It wasn't his red outfit. It was a sort of a cape he was wearing. And he started to escape, got on his horse, started off. Was spotted by a 16-year-old. Gilliland was his name, in John Severe's militia. Gilliland took careful aim, pulled the trigger, click, misfire. No time to reload. Ferguson would be long gone on that horse. Turned to his neighbor in the line, his father-in-law, 62-year-old Robert Young. Robert Young was a good shot also. Robert Young called his rifle by a nickname, the same nickname he called his wife. Gilliland said, "There goes Ferguson, see what you can do." He said, "We'll see what sweet lips can do." He fired. Ferguson fell off his horse. Ferguson's foot was caught in a stirrup. The horse drug that Ferguson body back and forth in front of sharpshooters. He had a lot more bullets in him when they got the horse stopped. Ferguson had sworn, "God Almighty himself cannot take me off this mountain." He was right. He's still up there, dead and buried in a common grave, and this is a little known fact, with one of his two red-headed girlfriends, both of whom were with him in his location there, and both of them, conveniently enough for Ferguson, were named Virginia. So if you go up there, you're expected to throw a stone at Ferguson's grave. Now, in a sense, that's to dishonor him, but in another sense, it honors him. He was a Scottish warrior, and the Scottish warriors generally were buried in stone cairns or piles of rock. So in a sense, we are showing our disgust when we throw a rock at him, but we are also honoring him as a Scottish soldier. So that was the Battle of Kings Mountain. After the battle, we had a big problem. There were still 800 or so of his army alive, and we had to try to do something with them. We had not planned on taking prisoners. So that was sort of a bloody chapter on our part. We got the worst traitors that were on his side, like the two that left our army, and we condemned them to hang, and so we started hanging 36 people, 3 at a time. After 9 had been hanged, Isaac Shelby said, "Stop it. We're not going to be like the British. Free those other prisoners and let them go. Tell them never to show their heads around here again, and let's stop the massacre." Well, it still went on to some extent, and some of the prisoners died on the march to the prison camp. Some died, some escaped. It was a messy end, but it was an important end, because the British had lost completely. The next battle at Cowpens, they also lost. Not a complete rout. They saved some of their army. But it bought time for George Washington to send men here. And the battle at Guilford Courthouse was decisive into our favor. And it forced Cornwallis to go to Yorktown for replacement of parts and things. And the French fleet blockaded the entrance to Chesapeake Bay 3 hours ahead of the British fleet, and Cornwallis had to surrender. The battle had been lost for the colony, and that loss started at Kings Mountain. And that's when I learned that my fifth great-grandfather was Robert Young, was the man that fired the shot that ended the battle, that changed the course of the Revolutionary War. And Sweet Lips Mary, my fifth great-grandmother, and Sweet Lips the rifle hangs in the State Museum of Tennessee. And that happened, we made the 501c3, we made the orchard a 501c3 public charity to preserve the history, heritage, culture, living things in the area, the music, the ways of the mountain, and we will never stop. I was born and raised in Indiana, as I've said before, and I thought the whole Revolutionary War was the Tea Party at Boston and George Washington. But now I found out the truth, how many of the battles were fought down here. South Carolina, more Revolutionary War battles than any other state, including Kings Mountain and Cowpens. And, you know, turning the battle in our favor was something that our ancestors here in these mountains did. And by golly, I think one of the most important things we do from the nonprofit and along with the Overmountain Victory Trail Association people is educate the school kids in their heritage. And every year that we're not bothered by the COVID virus, we train or teach 1,000 school kids right in this area about their heritage and its importance in making us an independent country. Well, after previous performance, I had a series of questions from people. One was, what is that thing you're wearing around your neck? Well, the thing I'm wearing around my neck is a gorget. That's the only French word I know, and that means throat. And this was what knights in armor wore back in the days when they were sword fighting. And this would protect my throat, or gorget, from a sword thrust. So this was a very important piece of my armor back in those days, if I had lived back in those days. But the gunpowder, the invention of gunpowder came along, and it made swords only pieces of decoration. And gunpowder and gunfights were more the course of the battles. So this was no longer a useful piece of a uniform. This became a symbol of the honor of my family. Every family had a shield that they would put on the gorget to show that they had been, or still were, subjects in the king's army. Well, when the French traders and trappers went into the wilderness here, they wore a gorget that was exactly like this. Exactly, because if they didn't have this emblem on it, they could be targets to be killed for the gorget. But this was a holy symbol for the Indians, many of them. It doesn't look like it to me or to you, but it reminded the Indians of a dragonfly. And that was good luck and good humor for the Indians. So French traders, especially early on, but then others, would wear this on the frontier as a way to maybe make an Indian friend instead of an enemy. So it could save my life again, but not from a sword.